they're also egalitarian because, you know, exactly the state needs to kind of smoothen out the differences and have a high taxation level in order to be able to do that. So basically what Danes want, they want to be left alone, but they also want not to be challenged by people who say, hey, why do you live in this way? You know, I live in this way, this is a much better way. So there is, in a way, like I think it's easier for Danes to feel that people who live a very different lifestyle are almost accusing them. Instead of just saying, hey, I like this and you like that. It's a bit like, why have you made other choices, you know? And which is a bit of a paradox in the sense because you'd think individualists would also allow other people to be individualists but that's not really the case. It is a bit like sort of a petit bourgeois individualism that wants people to be similar. And that's this anthropologist, Norwegian anthropologist, he said in the Scandinavian societies, equality becomes sameness. So the way we feel that we are equal is by being similar. You know, whereas in other societies like in the US, for example, equality will be an equality of your starting point. You start on equal terms, but you do not end up in a similar way. But here I think it's more like you also need to sort of have a relatively similar, you know, like lifestyle. Relatively, of course there are differences. So that is one way of kind of trying to explain why it is more comfortable for people to be with people whose lifestyle is relatively similar to their own.
Okay.
Yeah.
I read a report somewhere about 75% of Danes feel like their opinions are not important to the government, that they can't attend this discussion of public like democracy even. Is it?
I didn't get that. 75% what?
75% of the Danes feel like their opinions are not valued by the
listen
government.
to. Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that? I mean, it's a report published by some governmental research. Yeah.
Right.
Do you yourself feel the same?
I don't know. Do I feel listened to?
Because it sounds like a really liberal state.
Yeah.
But then also it's like, so it's not as it doesn't value individualism as much. So this liberalism didn't really pave the way to fascism in a way. So then I don't know. It sounds a bit contradictory to me that it is a place where you can speak up for yourself, but then you don't feel your opinion seems valued.
But I don't know in which societies do people feel that their opinions are valued. I'd like to see some comparison in that case, because I think it's a common problem that people feel that the politicians are, you know, a class that benefits themselves in many of the choices that they make.
75. Also, I don't really know if 75% is a high percentage or not. Yeah, true. I don't really know. Is it often to have protests, like demonstrations on the street, that is demonstrating the spectacle crowd?
That happens relatively frequently.
Right, yeah.
But I think it's not something very remarkable. I mean, if you're against a war or the new budget on schooling in Denmark or something like that, you'll have a demonstration and it's usually very peaceful.
Right.
So it's quite long ago. I mean, there are some things that can create. There are some things around the youth culture on the far left spectrum, where they have some. They have like this value of autonomy, and they sometimes some environments there will kind of clash with the police on the street, for example. But it's. I don't know if you can say does Copenhagen see more demonstrations than other capitals? I really don't know.
Yeah, I'm asking because Christiania is a really rare case. a squat that can't be evicted, and then government told them, okay, we're doing a social experiment. You know, we don't really want to be a part of it, but then guys just stay there, which is a really weird thing. And again, like Danes seem to be a bunch of peaceful people.
Yeah.
Really peaceful.
Yeah.
And then this sort of resistance. You know, on the other hand, in Norway they got evicted.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in Christiania they were just there.
Yeah.
And is it because they're really fierce or something? Or is it a reason that they were just being left alone in the end? I mean, obviously the government have a reason that I can find out, but in your opinion.
I think that in the Danish national self-perception, there is that element of something liberal and informal and anti-authoritarian that Christiania kind of embodies. So I think large groups in society, even though they don't really like the place and don't go there, they still feel that somehow it is part of the society that they can be there. And also they're not, I mean, they do have problems out there with the hash
Drug
market,
dealing.
soft drugs,
Yeah.
but still. And that creates some unrest, and police sometimes go there. But it's like, it has become a bit like a ritual thing. The police will go there and move the people who sell drugs and take, because they actually build stands, you know, for selling drugs, and they would,
Yeah, it's all on the news.
yeah, and they'll remove those.
Proper style.
So, yes. But then they pop up within a week or so
Yeah.
again. And it's just because it's just such a lucrative market. It's like there are
Yeah.
billions to be made on that stuff,
Yeah.
and it's not violent or dangerous. You see people spend like on a Friday afternoon. You'll see guys. I mean, people in suits and just all kinds of totally ordinary people, civil servants, whatever. Anybody just coming there and buy like small amounts of weed or something for weekend consumption. So
Maybe that's who get to them.
that is, I think that is part of it. Yeah. But clearly, I mean, especially a right-wing government will, and especially like this Danish Folk Party, they dislike Christiania as a phenomenon. I think they feel it's too risky to, and also even though it's quite peaceful, I think the demonstrations and the defense would be massive and probably quite violent if they were to actually. I'm not sure they even have the resources for it actually, to remove people and what would you do? I mean, thousands of people live there.
Yeah.
You know, it's their home. What are you going to do with them? You know, and they're not losers. You know, you have architects who run their own companies and are successful in Copenhagen, living out there. You know, they're going to be very visible and they have their kids living there. I mean, how you can't bomb them with tear gas and just say, hey, the work is done, right? So I think it's going to stay around for that, and also because it's very creative, and now it's been there for decades, and people have built houses in interesting styles and things like that. It's good for Copenhagen too, and they pay tax of the money they make, for example, on concerts. So
I'm guessing it's good for tourism as well.
that too, yeah.
It's an attraction, isn't it? I mean, everyone wants to see Christiania. And also, I feel like it would pop back up. I mean, if they would try to not remove it, but you know, break down, it's not the place itself or anything, it's the people who live there, right?
Exactly.
And they would just come back together.
Yeah, and the police already have like, I know that they own their cops lots of leave, because you know they simply do not have enough policemen. So whenever they do this, the policemen will work for so many hours and then they can go on leave afterwards, right? So I think if they were to remove that, and they would need to sit in the arbor, basically. They couldn't use the police because they wouldn't have the resources for it. So, and what would they do then? Then they would have a huge empty space. Okay, then they could start selling that to people who would develop fancy apartments. But I feel almost certain, and I've also heard that the companies who usually develop areas would stay away from that because they would be afraid of the effect on their image.
Yeah.
And who would want to live there? You would have graffiti all the time. You would have so much hassle with, and people would really hate you for living there.
And I feel like people would get kind of violent. I mean,
They would.
They would try to get revenge somehow.
Yeah.
They just want to be left alone if they're like at peace with the place that they are and everything.
Absolutely. People will. It would be very negative and very. So that I think that's the reason why it's there. Yeah.